The diplomatic chambers of the Galactic Council station hummed with tension as representatives from 12 different species gathered around the massive crystalline conference table. Ambassador Thexera of the Vorthak Empire adjusted her ceremonial robes, her four eyes scanning the room with barely concealed irritation. The war between the Vorthak and the Zalani Federation had raged for 3 solar cycles, consuming entire star systems and leaving billions dead in its wake. "This proposal is madness," hissed Chancellor Vex of the Zalani, his scaled features contorting with disgust. "A marriage between our species? We are biologically incompatible in every conceivable way." High Counselor Zephyr, an ancient being whose form shifted like living starlight, raised one ethereal hand for silence. "The marriage is not meant for reproduction, but for symbolism. A bond that cannot be broken by death or distance. The human custom of marriage has proven remarkably effective at creating lasting alliances throughout their brief but impressive history." Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth sat quietly at the far end of the table, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing the modest blue uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. She had been on the station for 6 months, serving as a cultural advisor for various interspecies disputes. Her species was still considered newcomers to the galactic community, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. "The humans have no stake in this conflict," Ambassador Thexera protested, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones typical of her species. "Why should their customs dictate our peace?" Sarah finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. "Because sometimes an outside perspective can see solutions that those too close to the problem cannot. My people have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Perhaps it takes the galaxy to end a war." The Vorthak ambassador's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of scoffing. "Your species has existed for a mere fraction of a cosmic second. What wisdom could you possibly offer beings who have traversed the stars for millennia?" "We offer the wisdom of those who have learned to survive against impossible odds," Sarah replied, standing slowly. "My species nearly destroyed itself countless times before we reached the stars. We learned that sometimes the only way forward is through trust, even when that trust seems impossible." Chancellor Vex leaned forward, his vertical pupils dilating. "And you believe this marriage ceremony of yours will create such trust?" "I believe that shared ritual creates shared meaning," Sarah said. "When two beings pledge their lives to each other before their communities, they create bonds that extend beyond themselves. They become symbols of what is possible." The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the station's life support systems. Through the massive viewing ports, the swirling colors of the nebulous sanctum painted everything in soft pastels, a reminder of the beauty that existed in the universe beyond the horrors of war. High Counselor Zephyr's form pulsed with what Sarah had learned indicated deep thought. "The proposal has merit. But who among your peoples would be willing to make such a sacrifice? To bind themselves to a being of another species for the sake of peace?" "It would not be a sacrifice," came a new voice from the entrance to the chamber. Captain Marcus Reeves of the Terran Defense Corps strode into the room, his military bearing evident in every step. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of countless battles fought and won. "It would be an honor." Sarah turned to stare at him, recognition flickering in her eyes. She knew Marcus by reputation. He was the hero of the Proxima siege, the man who had held off an entire fleet of raiders with nothing but a damaged cruiser and sheer determination. What she hadn't known was that he was aboard the station. "Captain Reeves," she said carefully, "this is a diplomatic matter." "Military intervention is not." "Ambassador Chen," Marcus interrupted gently, "with respect, this isn't about military intervention. This is about doing whatever it takes to stop people from dying." He turned to address the assembled aliens. "I volunteer to participate in this marriage ceremony, if it will bring peace between the Vorthak and the Zalani." Ambassador Thexera's four eyes focused on Marcus with predatory intensity. "You would bind yourself to one of our kind? A being whose very biology is antithetical to your own?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I would bind myself to peace itself if that's what it took. The details are just ceremony." "Fascinating," murmured High Counselor Zephyr. "A human willing to sacrifice personal freedom for the sake of strangers. Your species continues to surprise us, despite your youth." Chancellor Vex's tail lashed behind him, a sign of agitation. This is still madness. How can we be certain this human will honor such a bond? His species is known for their flexibility with commitments. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks at the insult, but Marcus simply smiled. Chancellor, my people have a concept called honor. It means that our word, once given, becomes more valuable than our lives. When I make a promise, I keep it. When I swear an oath, I die before I break it. The room erupted in a cacophony of alien languages as representatives began debating among themselves. Some species had fought alongside humans and knew their reputation for stubborn loyalty. Others had only heard rumors and remained skeptical. Marcus walked over to Sarah, his voice low. I'm sorry for interrupting your negotiations, Ambassador. But, when I heard about this proposal, I knew I had to volunteer. Why? Sarah asked, studying his face. You don't even know which species you'd be marrying into. The biological and cultural differences could be enormous. Because it's the right thing to do, Marcus replied simply. And, because sometimes someone has to take the first step, even when they can't see the path ahead. Before Sarah could respond, Ambassador Thexera's voice cut through the debate. If this human is sincere in his offer, then, I propose we test his resolve. Let him choose which of our peoples he will bind himself to. Let him look upon our forms and decide if his courage extends beyond mere words. The chamber fell silent again as all eyes turned to Marcus. The captain straightened his shoulders and nodded. I accept your challenge, Ambassador. But, I have one condition. You dare to make conditions? Chancellor Vex snarled. I ask that the choice be made not based on appearance or convenience, but on need, Marcus said. Let me speak with volunteers from both your peoples. Let me understand who needs this marriage most, who would benefit most from the peace it represents. I will choose based on that understanding. High Counselor Zephyr's form brightened noticeably. Wisdom beyond his years. Very well, Captain Reeves. We will arrange meetings with potential candidates from both species. You will have one rotation to make your decision. As the session concluded and the various representatives began filing out, Sarah remained behind with Marcus. The viewing ports now showed the brilliant light of the system's twin suns, casting everything in sharp relief. You realize what you've just committed to? She asked quietly. Marcus nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond. I've committed to the possibility of peace. Everything else is just details. The details matter, Marcus. You could be binding yourself to a being whose lifespan is 10 times yours, or whose culture requires things you can't even imagine. You could be signing away your freedom for the rest of your life. Freedom without peace is just another kind of prison, Marcus replied. I've seen enough war, Sarah. If there's a chance my marriage can end this one, then, it's a chance worth taking. Sarah watched him for a long moment, seeing something in his expression that went beyond mere duty or heroism. There was a light there, a burning conviction that reminded her of the stars themselves, distant but constant, warming everything in their reach. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, she said finally, or the most foolish. Marcus turned to her with a slight smile. In my experience, Ambassador, those two things are often the same. As they left the chamber together, neither of them could have predicted how dramatically their lives were about to change, or how the simple act of one human's willingness to sacrifice would reveal truths about their species that would the meeting chambers had been reconfigured to accommodate the unique environmental needs of both Vorthak and Zolani representatives. Captain Marcus Reeves sat in the center of a complex atmospheric dome that allowed him to breathe comfortably while his potential marriage partners could exist in their preferred conditions. The technology was a marvel of engineering, but Marcus barely noticed it. His attention was focused entirely on the beings he was meeting. The first candidate was Thexera herself, the Vorthak ambassador. In the specialized lighting of her environmental zone, Marcus could see her true form clearly for the first time. She was magnificent in an alien way, nearly 3 meters tall, with an exoskeleton that shifted between deep purple and silver depending on the angle of light. Her forearms moved with fluid grace, and her 4 eyes held an intelligence that was both ancient and sharp. I volunteer not out of personal desire, Thexera explained, her harmonic voice creating complex patterns in the air, but out of duty to my people. We have lost 17 colony worlds in this war. My youngest brood brother died defending the research station at Vorthak Prime. I would bind myself to you to ensure no other families suffer such losses. Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. Tell me about your culture, Ambassador. What would this marriage mean to your people? Among the Vorthak, a life bond is sacred beyond death. The bonded ones share not just legal status but spiritual connection. Your thoughts would become partially visible to me, and mine to you. We would be able to sense each other's emotional states across any distance. It is intimate beyond what I believe your species normally experiences. And you would accept such intimacy with a human? Thexera's mandibles clicked in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as thoughtful consideration. I have studied your species since you joined the galactic community, Captain Reeves. Humans fascinate us because you form bonds that transcend biology. You adopt young from different species on your own world. You mourn the deaths of artificial intelligences. You treat machines as friends and animals as family. If any species could understand the depth of a Vorthak life bond, it would be yours. Marcus nodded slowly, filing away the information. What would you expect from me as a bonded partner? Honesty above all else. The bond makes deception impossible between partners. Beyond that, presence when possible, understanding when presence is not possible, and the commitment to place our bond above all other considerations save the welfare of our respective peoples. The conversation continued for another hour, with Thexera explaining the intricacies of Vorthak society, their 7-generation family structures, and their complex honor codes. Marcus found himself impressed by the depth of thought that went into every aspect of their civilization. The second meeting was with Vexandra, Chancellor Vex's younger sister. Unlike her brother, who was a politician, Vexandra was a warrior poet, a combination that was highly revered in Zilani culture. Her scale form was smaller than Thexera's but no less impressive. Her scales shifted through a spectrum of blues and greens, and her serpentine movements held a hypnotic quality. I offer myself, Vexandra said without preamble, because I have seen what this war has cost both our peoples. I commanded the defense of Zilani 7 when your people mediated the evacuation. I watched human ships dive into enemy fire to save civilians they had never met. If a human can risk death for strangers, I can risk marriage for peace. Marcus was surprised. Human ships were involved in that evacuation? I wasn't aware we had forces in that sector. 3 medical frigates and their escorts. Captain Elena Vasquez refused to leave until every civilian transport was away. Her ship took heavy damage, but she held the line. We remember such courage. What does marriage mean in Zilani culture? Partnership in all things, Vexandra replied, her vertical pupils focusing intently on Marcus. The bonded ones hunt together, fight together, and build together. Among my people, marriage is about complementary strengths. I am a warrior, but I would also be expected to support whatever path my partner chose to walk. And you would accept a human partner who might see the world very differently than you do? Vexandra's tail swished behind her, and what Marcus had learned was the Zilani equivalent of a smile. Captain, my people believe that the best partnerships are forged between opposites. Fire and water, earth and sky. A human and a Zilani could create something entirely new. The conversation with Vexandra revealed a culture built around the concept of balance. Zilani marriages were about 2 individuals becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Where Vorthak bonds were about spiritual intimacy, Zilani partnerships were about practical synergy. As the meetings concluded, Marcus found himself in an impossible position. Both candidates were remarkable beings who genuinely wanted to contribute to peace. Both cultures offered different but meaningful approaches to the institution of marriage. How could he choose between them without insulting the other? That evening, Marcus found himself in the station's observation deck, staring out at the stars and trying to process everything he had learned. The deck was one of the few areas designed for multiple species, with environmental controls that allowed different beings to coexist comfortably. Saracen found him there, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said, offering him one of the cups. Marcus accepted it gratefully. "Thanks. I've been trying to figure out how to make an impossible choice. Want to talk about it?" Marcus took a sip of coffee and began describing his meetings with both candidates. Sarah listened without interruption, her diplomatic training evident in her careful attention to every detail. "Both options sound meaningful," she said when he finished. "What's making the choice so difficult?" "Because I'm not just choosing a marriage partner," Marcus replied. "I'm choosing which culture gets validated and which one gets rejected. I'm choosing which species feels honored and which one feels insulted. The wrong choice could make things worse instead of better." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching the play of starlight across the nebula beyond the viewport. "Can I ask you something personal, Marcus?" "Of course." "Why did you volunteer for this?" "Really? I know what you said in the meeting about duty and honor, but there's something else, isn't there?" Marcus set down his coffee and leaned back against the viewport. "You want the truth?" "I'm dying, Sarah." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "Radiation exposure from the Proxima siege. The medical team estimates I have maybe 18 months, 2 years at the outside. The treatments might extend that, but they'd also leave me weak and dependent." He turned to look at her, and she could see the pain he'd been hiding behind his calm exterior. "When I heard about this marriage proposal, I saw an opportunity to make my remaining time mean something." "Marcus, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Nobody does. I've kept it classified." "But it changes the equation, doesn't it? I'm not sacrificing a long life for peace. I'm investing a short one." Sarah felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "That doesn't make you expendable." "No, but it makes me available in a way that someone with decades ahead of them wouldn't be. And maybe that's what this situation needs." Before Sarah could respond, the observation deck's communications system activated. "Captain Reeves, please report to Conference Chamber 7. Your presence is requested immediately." Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances. "Looks like decision time," he said. They made their way to the conference chamber to find both Thexera and Vexandra waiting, along with High Counselor Zephyr and several other diplomatic representatives. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. "Captain Reeves," High Counselor Zephyr began, "have you reached a decision regarding your choice of marriage partner?" Marcus stood straight, every inch the military officer. "I have, Counselor. But before I announce my choice, I need to tell you something that might change how all of you view this arrangement." He proceeded to explain his medical condition, watching as the assembled aliens processed the information. Some species showed shock through changes in coloration or posture, others remained stoic. "This changes everything," Chancellor Vex declared. "You are asking our representatives to bond with someone who will soon die. That is not a foundation for lasting peace." "With respect, Chancellor," Marcus replied, "I disagree. My condition doesn't change my commitment to the bond or my ability to honor it. If anything, it intensifies both." Thexera's four eyes focused on Marcus with new intensity. "You told us this because you believe honesty is required for any meaningful bond. I told you because you deserve to know what you're agreeing to. Now, my choice." Marcus turned to address both candidates directly. "I choose both." The chamber erupted in shocked voices from a dozen different species. High Counselor Zephyr raised both hands for silence. "Explain yourself, Captain," Zephyr commanded. Marcus took a deep breath. "The purpose of this marriage is to create bonds that will bring peace between the Vorthak and Zalani peoples. Instead of choosing between you and potentially creating resentment, I propose we create something unprecedented. A three-way bond that connects all of us together." "That's impossible," Vexandra protested. "No species has ever attempted such a thing." "No single species," Marcus agreed. "But we're not talking about a single species anymore. We're talking about creating something new, something that transcends the limitations of any one culture.
Thexera's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of intense thought. A human bonded to both Vorthak and Zelani.
The spiritual intimacy of my people combined with the practical partnership of theirs. It would create connections not just between individuals but between our species.
It would also be completely unprecedented, High Counselor Zephyr noted. We have no framework for such an arrangement.
Then, we create one, Marcus said simply.
My people have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Right now, peace is a necessity.
Whatever we need to invent to achieve it, we invent. Sarah watched from the side of the chamber, and, for the first time, she truly understood what the other representatives had meant when they talked about humans blazing like stars. Marcus wasn't just proposing a solution, he was willing to become something entirely new to make that solution work. The debate that followed lasted hours, but, gradually, a consensus began to emerge.
The three-way bond would be unlike anything attempted before, combining elements from both alien cultures with human adaptability.
It would require new ceremonies, new legal frameworks, and new understanding of what marriage could mean on a galactic scale. As the session finally concluded with agreement to proceed, Sarah found herself wondering if they had just witnessed the birth of something that would change interspecies relations forever. Marcus had volunteered to be more than a bridge between cultures, he had volunteered to become a new kind of being entirely.
Shaped the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human.
The ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Chamber, a massive space at the heart of the Galactic Council Station that had been designed to accommodate every known sentient species. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to witness what was being called the most significant interspecies event since the founding of the Council itself. Marcus stood in the center of the chamber, wearing a specially designed suit that incorporated symbolic elements from all three cultures involved. The human portion was a simple military dress uniform, representing honor and service. Woven into the fabric were Vorthak ceremonial threads that shifted color with his emotional state, and Zelani scale patterns that marked him as a warrior diplomat. To his left stood Thexera, magnificent in ceremonial armor that had been worn by Vorthak dignitaries for over 1,000 years. The ancient metal seemed to glow with its own inner light, and the harmonic resonance of her breathing created a subtle musical accompaniment to the proceedings. To his right, Vexandra wore the flowing robes of a Zelani warrior poet, the fabric moving like liquid across her scale form. Ancient symbols were painted on her visible skin in silver ink that caught the light with every movement. High Counselor Zephyr presided over the ceremony, their form more radiant than Marcus had ever seen it. Behind them, a choir composed of members from 17 different species provided harmonies that seemed to transcend the boundaries of language itself. We gather today, Zephyr intoned, their voice carrying throughout the chamber without technological amplification, to witness the forging of bonds that have never before been attempted. 3 beings, 3 species, 3 cultures, becoming something new in the service of peace. The ceremony began with each culture's traditional elements. Marcus spoke the human vows, promising to honor and protect his partners with the same dedication he had shown his homeworld. His words were simple but carried the weight of absolute sincerity. I, Marcus Reeves, take you both as partners in all things. I promise to stand with you against whatever challenges we may face, to share your burdens as you share mine, and to build something beautiful from our differences. Thexera's vows were sung rather than spoken, her harmonic voice creating complex patterns that conveyed meanings human language couldn't express. The translation that appeared on screens around the chamber spoke of soul-deep connection and shared destiny. I, Thexera of the 7th Brood, keeper of the ancient harmonies, bind my spirit to yours across the void between stars. Let our thoughts flow together like streams joining a river. Let our purposes align like moons in their orbits. In joy and sorrow, in victory and defeat, in life and beyond death, we are one. Vexandra's vows were expressed through a combination of words and ritual movement, her body describing ancient patterns that told the story of 2 rivers joining and becoming a mighty torrent. I, Vexandra, daughter of the storm-touched clan, pledge my strength to our partnership. Where you are weak, I will be strong. Where I falter, you will lift me up. Together we will create something that none of us could achieve alone. Our bond will be the foundation upon which peace is built. As each set of vows was completed, something extraordinary began to happen. The Vortex ceremonial threads in Marcus's uniform began to glow more brightly, responding not just to his own emotions but to those of his partners as well. The connection was becoming visible, tangible. But it was during the final phase of the ceremony that something truly unprecedented occurred. As the three beings joined hands to complete the bond, Marcus began to glow with an inner light that had nothing to do with alien technology or ceremonial garments. At first, the observers thought it might be a reaction to the Vortex bonding process, but as the light grew brighter, it became clear that something else was happening.
Marcus was blazing like a star, literally radiating energy that the station's sensors couldn't fully explain.
Ambassador Sarah Chen watched from the diplomatic section, her eyes wide with wonder and concern. She had seen humans in extreme situations before, but nothing like this.
Marcus looked like a being transformed, as if the act of bonding with two alien species had unlocked something fundamental in his nature. The light wasn't painful to look at.
Instead, it seemed to inspire a sense of calm and possibility in everyone present. Species that had been natural enemies for millennia found themselves standing side by side, united in witnessing something that transcended their individual differences.
Dr. Keshan, the station's chief xenobiologist, frantically monitored her instruments from the observation booth.
"The energy readings are off the charts," she reported to her assistant.
"But it's not harmful radiation. It's something else entirely.
Something that seems to be affecting the quantum fields around him." On the ceremony floor, Thexera and Vexandra were experiencing the bonding in ways their species' oldest traditions had never described.
The Vortex spiritual connection wasn't just linking her to Marcus's consciousness, it was linking her to something vast and warm and inexplicably hopeful. The Zalani partnership bond wasn't just creating synergy between complementary strengths, it was amplifying both partners in ways that shouldn't have been possible.
Marcus himself was aware of the change but not frightened by it. He could feel his partner's thoughts and emotions flowing through him, but instead of overwhelming him, they seemed to be unlocking capacities he had never known he possessed. The radiation damage that was slowly killing him was being held at bay by energies he couldn't understand but somehow trusted completely.
High Counselor Zephyr's form pulsed with colors that indicated profound amazement. "The bond is complete," they announced, though their voice carried undertones of wonder. "But something more has been created here today. Something that will require years of study to fully understand."
As the ceremony concluded and the various representatives began to file out, many pausing to stare at the still glowing human, Sarah made her way down to the ceremony floor. Marcus's light was beginning to fade to a gentle luminescence, but the sense of transformation remained. "How do you feel?" she asked when she reached him. Marcus considered the question carefully.
"Different. Connected.
Like I'm part of something much larger than myself." He looked at his two partners, who were regarding him with expressions that mixed awe with deep affection. "But also more myself than I've ever been, if that makes sense." "The bonding worked," Thexera said, her harmonic voice carrying notes of wonder. "But it worked in ways our ancestors never predicted. I can feel both of you in my consciousness, but I can also feel something beyond you. Something that connects to the space between stars." Vexandra's scales had shifted to colors that indicated deep contentment mixed with excitement. "The partnership is strong. Stronger than any individual bond my people have ever recorded. We are more than the sum of our parts. We are something entirely new." Over the following days, the effects of the unprecedented bonding became clear. Marcus's condition had not just stabilized, it had completely reversed. The radiation damage was being repaired by energies that seemed to flow through the bond itself. More importantly, the psychological connection between the three partners was creating effects that rippled outward to their respective species. Vortex and Zalani forces that had been engaged in bitter combat found their aggression draining away when they came into contact with individuals who had met any of the bonded trio. The effect wasn't magical control, it was more like a reminder of what was possible when beings chose cooperation over conflict. Dr. Keshan's research revealed that humans possessed a unique quantum field signature that, when properly activated, could serve as a bridge between other consciousness types. The marriage ceremony had somehow unlocked this latent ability in Marcus, turning him into a living connection point between species.
3 months after the ceremony, representatives from 12 different warring factions had requested similar bonding arrangements with human volunteers. The pattern was always the same: humans who entered into deep spiritual or emotional bonds with alien species began to manifest the same star-like radiance, the same ability to bridge differences that had seemed insurmountable. Sarah, now promoted to Chief Ambassador for Interspecies Relations, found herself coordinating what was becoming known as the Human Bridge Initiative. Marcus had become the first of what experts were calling a new type of being, humans who had evolved beyond their original biological constraints to become living symbols of unity. But, perhaps the most remarkable change was in Marcus himself. The man who had volunteered for what he thought would be a brief symbolic gesture had discovered a purpose that transformed his understanding of what it meant to be human. He hadn't just gained years of additional life, he had gained a reason for existence that stretched far beyond any individual timeline. Standing in the observation deck where he and Sarah had first discussed his choice, Marcus watched ships from former enemy species docking together, their crews working side by side on projects that would benefit entire sectors. The glow that had become his constant companion wasn't just a sign of his transformation, it was a beacon that reminded every being who saw it that peace wasn't just possible, it was inevitable when approached with genuine commitment. "Do you ever regret your choice?" Sarah asked, joining him at the viewport. Marcus smiled, and, for a moment his radiance brightened enough to reflect off the metal bulkheads around them. "How can I regret becoming more than I ever dreamed I could be? I thought I was giving up my life for peace. Instead, I discovered that peace gave me a life worth living." Behind them, the sounds of the station carried voices from dozens of species, all working together on the complex logistics of building a truly unified galactic community. And, at the center of it all was the proof that sometimes, the greatest transformations came from the simplest acts of courage, the willingness of one being to say yes when everyone else was arguing about whether something was possible. Marcus had blazed like a star not because of any special technology or alien influence, but because he had unlocked the most fundamental truth about his species, that humans became most themselves when they gave themselves completely to something larger than themselves. In choosing to marry for peace, he had revealed that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their adaptability, it was their capacity to become bridges between the impossible and the inevitable.